Good
Live.
day, loves. We are almost full. We are live on Facebook and YouTube
Yes, indeed.
and Instagram.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Holistic Freedom Secrets podcast.
Yes.
I'm one of your hosts, Coach Soul.
And good day. I am Coach Tensi. Welcome to Friday, which is Shine Day. This is all about sharing honest, insightful, and nourishing expressions. And today we have a really amazing topic. It's gonna be a hard hitter, okay? Yeah, for episode 20. We are
Absolutely.
diving into breaking barriers, the power of persistent truth telling.
Yes, indeed. And before we do, go ahead and do us a quick favor.
Mm-hmm.
Please like, subscribe, comment, notify yourself, and share this out. Right? Turn on your notifications. Share this video out. Like, subscribe to the channel, do everything that tells the algorithm that this content is something that you like, this content is something worthy of the interwebs, and this content is something that you think other people will like as well.
Yes.
Um, but
That's
yeah, we're
important.
talking about breaking barriers, talking about truth telling, and we're talking about power and persistence. These things are all tied intricately to the concept of shine because shine, as Coach Tensi already pointed out, sharing honest,
Mm-hmm.
insightful, and nourishing expressions is not always about sharing what people like to hear or sharing in the style that people like to listen to the most or sharing in the context that people like to speak of. Right? Sometimes you hear something, it reveals to your mind because of your background or the information you're privy to, and they're not, or what you just learned earlier this week or whatever. Sometimes you hear something somebody says, or you read a text or whatever, and you realize, oh, this person is ignorant of such and such, and dang, they might not even like to hear such and such because they're talking about drinking coffee every morning and they have no idea, what that could lead to and what that has led to for, millions of people, especially in America, where we also pair the coffee with the milk with the chemicals in it and all the, the things that we do in America with our food and the FDA, the bad things. But anyway, this person talks about, drinking energy drinks in the morning before work. And they probably have no idea about this information that I know about energy drinks. And in this fictional yet relatable scenario, you're met with a choice to either shine on this person, share honest, insightful, and nourishing expressions with this person, or to enable this person's self-harmful, self-inflicted harmful behavior. Does it mean you're a bad person if you choose not to suggest that they leave these ridiculously crazy energy drinks behind? No, but it does suggest that you're unwilling to be honest. And so we don't want to be unwilling to be honest, right? That's the importance of truth telling, is your willingness to be honest.
I want to take it a level deeper and talk about holistic freedom in the context of freedom itself. So, the pathway to freedom, it always starts with love, right? So, love is that consciousness, that awareness of self, that awareness that all things are connected and there's this generative creative power with no strings attached that unconditionally allows for all things, right? And and grounding that love in understanding. So really understanding ourselves to a T is important. Our triggers, our habits, our emotions, our mental patterns, our how we how we need to act and move and interact with others. Understanding ourselves and understanding others is vital. And that leads to order. And order allows for us to right the things that are wrong within our home, within our workspaces, within our communities. Having order, having that self-discipline, and allowing for there to be freedom. That's where freedom persists, where we're not forcing ourselves on others. We're not in terms of our ideas per se, but we're doing what we need to do, which is telling the truth, being honest in ways that we're not trying to coerce or manipulate others into being on our side or whatever. It's just no strings attached. This is what it is, and it's coming from a space of love, right? Versus, on the other hand, there's control and there's slavery and there's that bondage that we don't want. We don't want to keep growing in our world, in our society. And that comes from fear. The root of that is fear, which leads to confusion, where we are unaware of how to even move forward, and that leads to chaos. Okay, and when we can't come to understanding, when we can't, come back to love, you know, and we stay in fear, that will lead to us trying to control others, which is a violation of free
or
will.
or enable others to control us or others.
Yes,
So
through inaction.
yeah, absolutely. So let's tie it all in a nice bow with a little bit of a story. Hopefully, you guys have heard of the country Vietnam. Vietnam. Uh, there was a time, 80s, 90s, where many of the children in this region were malnourished. There was a widespread malnourished children issue that seemed impossible to solve with the traditional top down, expert driven solutions that Vietnam was used to at the time. And there was almost nowhere you could go to, like, if I move here, then I'll fix the problem, because almost everywhere you looked, a lot of the children were malnourished. And now I say a lot of, and I say many of, and I say most of, because not all the children were malnourished. And so there was some families, and you almost didn't even notice it, uh, but some family that had multiple children, and these multiple children were growing up with healthy body weights, and you could tell the malnourishment wasn't necessarily there. Now, what was driving some of the malnourishment had to do with some cultural norms. One of them being the fact that shrimp and crab meat was said to be bad for children, and so you don't feed kids shrimp meat, crab meat, or shrimp and crab meat. And this cultural norm was essentially being broken by a few mothers. And what happened was there was people that were interested in how to solve this problem without waiting on a top down expert driven solution. And they went out into the communities and they spoke with, for hours sometimes, the mothers that had children, especially multiple children, that did not have malnourished children. What were you doing? How are you doing it? What could other people start to do if they really want to help fix this problem in their own homes? And turns out, because it was a cultural norm to not feed their kids shrimp and crab meat, these mothers were doing so quietly. They were doing so in their own home, not worried about anybody else. And long story short, the problem was eventually fixed by a group of people that came together called the Positive Deviance Initiative. And the Positive Deviance Initiative was born by way of elevating these mothers' voices and these mothers' stories, because it wasn't enough for the outsiders to just go, door to door and say, "Hey, feed your kids shrimp and crab, right? Feed your kids a bunch of shrimp, and they won't be malnourished," because it was a cultural norm not to do that. There was already programming in place that said, "No, I can't do that. That's against our way.
It's against my instructions.
It's against my instructions." So
Lego movie reference, y'all.
So elevating the voices of these mothers was actually a more holistic solution, and they told what's called radical truth, right? Radical truth is, as it's going to be defined here, how we're going to talk about it. Radical truth is just truth that goes against cultural norms. I'm almost done.
Sweet.
You're almost done. And so in elevating their voices, not only was this problem solved, but also positive deviance as a practical solution for many other problems spread not only through Vietnam, but also in neighboring countries. And, there's divisions that teach positive deviance to this day, 25, 30 years later. So very, very positive story that deals with sharing radical truth. Again, truth that goes against cultural norms, and how powerful it can be. It saved children's lives, right? When you're talking about malnourishment, you're also talking about disease. You're also talking about death. And for years, just because they were so married to this idea of a top-down expert opinion, top-down expert solution, top-down instruction sheet being given, and that somehow working, they couldn't solve the problem, right? And then there was the stigma around what happened to be the solution in this one scenario, right? Feeding shrimp to your kids is not going to solve every problem in the world, but it definitely solved this one.
Yeah.
So radical truth telling, very, very important.
Yeah. So now let's let's dive into how do we defeat ignorance over time with persistence. So the first thing is to understand what exactly is ignorance, because there's a misconception of what that is. When you think of ignorance, the word ignorance, what comes to your mind? Put it in the chat. If you're watching the replay, put it in the chat, okay? When we think of ignorance, what comes to mind? And you can pause the video if you're watching the replay, okay? Let's play along here. So ignorance is often seen as like you just don't know. You just don't know, you're ignorant, or you're acting kind of like it. To me, it has kind of like a rash, kind of like a bad connotation of stupidity attached to it. But that's not what ignorance really is. It comes from a older meaning, right? Ignorance. So to ignore information that is available to you to tap into. So there's a difference. There used to be another word in our language system, and that was called nescience, and that used to be used regularly. And nescience, on the other hand, is it's not information available to you at all. You would have no way of knowing, of processing that information, of applying that information. It's just not available to you. And so, like an example, a baby is nescient. They don't know about radical truth telling at 7 months old.
Right. They don't know the lie.
Yeah, they don't know. And it's not information available to them versus ignorance. Now that is, we have the internet now. We have all these libraries, all these public libraries, all of this access to information that is truthful. Although it's hidden and although it's muddied oftentimes and we're distracted away from it, if we choose to ignore that information, then we are being ignorant. That is the true application of the word. So we'll go with that. And so we can break through ignorance and really start to build those connections with others through truth to help uplift and empower our communities, our families, our lives by coming into more growth and understanding.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up how even seeking truth through the various mediums that we have available to us, the waters have been muddied, and there are initiatives and agendas
Mm.
being carried out to keep people in a state of ignorance and keep people in a state of nescience, because they obscure information or they put barriers in the path to getting accurate information. For instance, there was this guy, Zach Voorhees, Zach, Zach, Voorhees, Vorhies, look him up, who was a senior software engineer at Google, right? And he could no longer basically live with his conscience, and he revealed 950 pages that exposed a specific agenda about Google, basically that Google manipulates mankind by hiding certain information and imposing other information in its place. And they blacklist thousands of websites simply because they want to paint a narrative when you go and search certain keywords or search certain questions. Their mission is to program humanity. This is, in the words of Zach Voorhees, their mission is to program humanity. And what he means is program us into a state of ignorance. Now, does that mean that the information is not still relatively easy to find? No, the information is still relatively easy to find. There are more search engines than just Google. DuckDuckGo and the Brave browser search engine are both not affiliated with Google's practices of blacklisting websites, where it won't even pop up. You can't even go and look and see that the website is completely, ridiculous or maybe truthful, right? You can't even go discern for yourself. They just blacklist the website. You don't even get to add that to your possibilities of what's going on when you search something. So the waters are muddy, but if we can take a second to be a little persistent. Again, we're defeating ignorance over time with persistence, over time with persistence. Hey, baby. Then we can go to a different search engine and see if we can get a more holistic picture. Continuous education and self-awareness are key in truth telling because they're key in truth seeking, right? Being aware of what you know, being aware of what you'd want to know, very, very powerful things. And here's the thing about truth telling: repetition is the name of the game, because when it comes to lies, when it comes to spinning the lie and spinning the false narrative, repetition is how the mainstream, news stations and news networks get down. It's how the politicians get down. The repetition of saying the same thing over and over and over and over again is the name of the game of how to defeat ignorance over time with persistence.
Go ahead.
Nice. I was just making sure it was still live over there. Hello, Facebook land. Um, and that's basically what I wanted to say about that. We're coming to the close of the episode very soon, but the waters do get muddy when you're trying to seek out information, but that doesn't mean that the information is not extremely easy to seek, especially when you know some people that are knowledgeable in the field of what you're talking about. You can just go and see if they have content on YouTube or have a book or something like that, and go read an actual book. Uh, you know, just invest the spiritual currencies, right? Time and attention, and you can gain truth so that you can share it.
I would like to add on to that. When it comes to being persistent, in telling the truth. It There are some things that we can apply into our lives, some strategies that we can use to really shine and share our honest expressions, our authentic expressions, our truthful expressions with others so that we can cultivate that growth to move everyone towards being more aligned with their visions of freedom for themselves and for us collectively. And some ways to do that, salud, yeah. Some ways to do that are to seek out continuous education. So seek out ways to learn, to read more, like what Coach Soul is alluding to. Practicing some self awareness, what being honest with what you don't really know. Where's the confusion? That's where there has been some fear. That's where there's likely some control happening, some power dynamics where someone is trying to either hide things away or you need to make an effort to let that information be known and understood by you so that you can then share. So repeating facts and repeating them in ways that connect is something that I want to invite us to consider too. Like telling stories and relating to people like, hey, I get where you're coming from. Like I too have been there and let's work together. Let's kind of link arms and like climb out of this together. Is a really cool approach that I like to take. Everyone's different, but that's my style. And then being patient and resilient in the face of resistance is important because as soon as you bring something up that does not fit into the cultural norm, that does not fit into the family dynamic norm, that does not fit into what people expect of you in terms of the type of conversation you're having, there's this wall that just comes up for in others sometimes, often. And being persistent doesn't mean like trying to hammer the point in at that time, but it could mean it's spread out over time. I mean, it could look like that if it's something that, hey, this is like pretty, like you need to get this right now, okay? Um, but having that fearlessness when it comes to sharing information is going to be a big tool in your toolkit. So remembering that there is this infinite divine power that connects all things and that flows through your body just as it does theirs is going to be a great anchoring point to come back to. Remembering that you are not just, you're like a body, you're like a cell in the body of God, okay? And everyone is. Everyone is. And so remembering that everyone is connected in that sort of way is important to keep in mind when you're overcoming fear. You have to remember that divine love when you're overcoming fear. So having that connection back to your be practice of practicing that meditation, contemplation, understanding when it comes to what does that mean for me? Like this divine power, whatever. But really sitting with yourself and building up that confidence might take finding support communities. There's Facebook groups of every sort of interest in the world. Find those groups that align with the truth that you wish to tell and go into them.
Yeah. And not only overcoming fear, because here's the thing with the overcoming fear, you don't have to overcome their fear. You don't have to overcome the fear of somebody you're sharing with. You just have to overcome the fear within yourself about, first of all, is this right? Is this true that I'm sharing it? Because sometimes you can feel a bit of imposter syndrome when you're sharing something that's radical truth that goes against cultural norms, right? So there's overcoming that fear of just being accurate and not doing something by mistake that you would accuse someone else of doing when they share the mainstream narrative. Also, overcoming the fear of, will this person like me? Will this person accept me? Will this person accept the information? And overcoming the fear that there may be some sort of external threat if you share this truth to enough people and your name, gets associated with sharing some sort of truth. And there are agencies out there, Agent Smiths, if you will, that will come and get you for sharing your truth or ban your book or whatever. And this fear that you overcome within yourself, you overcome by continuous, as she pointed out, as I pointed out, education, meaning looking for and following the truth and not following what your preconceived notion is, but just following where the truth leads when you seek information.
And that could mean reading the research studies yourself, reading the source documents yourself.
Yeah.
Going straight to the what did they say?
Yep. Interviewing the person. Bunch of different primary sources or very, very close to primary, secondary sources. Or making sense out of looking at it from at least 5 different angles. I believe Jordan Peterson talked about that.
That's
being able to, you're fine. Being able to defend your position from 5 different angles because you're familiarized with them and you're able to make sense of a whole picture, even without necessarily seeing a primary source, because that's what makes sense to you and you can defend it.
Yeah. If a name is triggering to you, just zoom out and apply the principle, because the 5 different sources thing is just across the board standard good practice.
Well, 5 angles.
Yeah, 5 different sources, 5 different angles type thing. So it could be 5 different books. It could be like different perspectives that you talk to people, 5 different angles, 5 different perspectives. That is just across the board good. So, some people with names, they get like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna like bounce off and whatever. But if you're really seeking for freedom, it's a very arduous journey of truth telling, and you're gonna have to persevere through those sorts of triggers if you find yourself like, ooh, I don't know. Yeah.
Right. And so again, the point is not to overcome their fear. It's to overcome your own fear.
Yeah.
And in that way, you have power on your side. You have power in what you're saying because you know it's true. And you have power in what you're saying because you're seeking connection that's aligned with truth. And that just has a natural power in and of itself. And I think that brings us to the end of our discussion here. It's pretty much all we have time for. Did you want to piggyback with anything else?
Yeah. Just in conclusion, loves, we got this. Okay. We got this. And when I say we, I mean like you as well. We got this. We're on this journey. And if you communicate from your heart and you are seeking to meet someone where they're at and really like connect with them, and you make that known and clear, then you will find your way. You will find your way to more meaningful connections, and you'll find your way to shining more brightly. And it comes with time. It's a journey. And you find your way and your style of doing so. But I want to invite you to share in the comments, what are your experiences with radical truth telling, with telling the truth and overcoming like something that you didn't know, overcoming confusion, overcoming ignorance? What's something that, share an experience of your own, because everyone has one and I can't wait to see yours. So.
Absolutely. Other than that, like, comment, subscribe, follow, notify yourself when we're going live, and share this video out. And we will see you guys on Monday with the next B episode.
Coming on back on
Monday. So thank you all so much for being here. That's all we got time for today, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take good care, loves. Peace.